The soft crinkle of a candy wrapper, the gentle crack of hard sugar yielding to patient teeth. The slow, deliberate way a piece of caramel stretches and gives way, releasing flavors that have been carefully crafted to bring pure joy. Right now, somewhere in the world, a child is experiencing their first taste of chocolate, their eyes widening with wonder at this magical transformation of simple ingredients into something that seems to capture happiness itself. Did you know that the average person will consume over 22 pounds of candy in their lifetime? Or that the oldest known candy recipe dates back over 4,000 years to ancient Egypt, where they crystallized honey with nuts and fruits. Sugar has been humanity's sweet companion through empires and innovations, wars and celebrations, always there to mark our most precious moments with just a touch of sweetness. Tonight on Midnight Deep Dive, we're unwrapping the complete story of candy. From ancient honey crystals formed in Egyptian tombs to the molecular gastronomy confections that push the boundaries of what we consider possible in the realm of taste. We'll trace sugar's journey across continents and centuries, discover the gentle alchemy that transforms simple ingredients into edible joy, and explore how something as humble as crystallized sweetness became one of humanity's most beloved pleasures. So settle in beneath your softest blanket, close your eyes, and let yourself drift peacefully as we uncover the sweet, gentle history that has been bringing smiles to faces for thousands of years. Imagine walking through a sun-drenched marketplace in ancient Egypt, the air thick with the scent of spices and the gentle buzz of commerce. Vendors call out their wares in melodic voices, but there's one stall that draws your attention, not through loud proclamations, but through the golden gleam of something precious catching the light. Here, crystallized honey glistens like amber jewels, mixed with almonds and dates, creating confections that would be immediately recognizable to any modern candy lover. This is where our sweet story truly begins, not with industrial machinery or scientific precision, but with the simple human desire to preserve and enhance nature's own candy. Honey. The ancient Egyptians discovered that by carefully heating honey and allowing it to cool slowly, they could create hard, translucent treats that would last for months in their hot climate. Archaeological evidence from tombs shows us elaborate honey cakes and crystallized fruits that were placed alongside pharaohs for their journey into the afterlife, suggesting that even in death, sweetness was considered essential for comfort. The process they used was remarkably similar to modern hard candy making. They would heat honey in clay vessels over carefully controlled fires, testing the consistency by dropping small amounts into cool water. The same basic technique candy makers use today to determine if their syrup has reached the proper stage. When the honey reached what we now call the hard crack stage, they would pour it into molds or shape it by hand, sometimes adding precious nuts, dried fruits, or aromatic spices that had traveled great distances along ancient trade routes. But honey wasn't the only sweet treasure of the ancient world. In India, around the same time, sugar cane was being cultivated and processed into crystalline sweetness that would eventually revolutionize the entire concept of candy. The Sanskrit word sharkara gave us our modern word sugar, and the techniques developed in ancient Indian monasteries for purifying and crystallizing cane juice laid the foundation for every candy recipe that would follow. Picture those patient monks working in the cool pre-dawn hours, tending great copper vats where cane juice slowly transformed into golden crystals. They discovered that by adding certain plant ashes, they could clarify the juice and create purer sugar. They learned that temperature and timing were everything. Too hot, and the sugar would burn; too cool, and it wouldn't crystallize properly. This was the beginning of candy making as both art and science. The Greeks and Romans took these Eastern innovations and added their own touches. Roman confectioners, called dulcerae, created elaborate sugar sculptures for wealthy households, while Greek physicians like Dioscorides documented the medicinal properties of various honey and herb combinations. They believed that certain sweet preparations could soothe the throat, aid digestion, or even cure melancholy. Ideas that aren't entirely wrong, considering the psychological comfort that sweetness provides. In medieval monasteries across Europe, monks became the guardians of candy-making knowledge. They had the time, resources, and dedication necessary to perfect complex recipes that required hours of patient stirring and careful attention. Monastery infirmaries were often the birthplace of medicated candies, honey-based lozenges infused with herbs that could ease coughs or settle stomachs. These early throat lozenges were the ancestors of modern cough drops, and many of the flavor combinations developed by medieval monks are still popular today. The spice trade brought new dimensions to candy making. Cinnamon from Ceylon, ginger from India, and precious vanilla from the New World all found their way into confectioners' recipes. Each spice not only added flavor, but also brought with it stories of distant lands and dangerous journeys. A piece of ginger candy wasn't just a treat, it was a small adventure, a taste of exotic places that most people would never see. During this time, sugar itself was so precious that it was sometimes used as currency. A few precious crystals could purchase necessities, and candy was literally worth its weight in silver. This rarity made candy not just a treat, but a symbol of wealth and sophistication. The ability to offer guests crystallized fruits or honey confections was a sign of prosperity and good hospitality. The techniques developed during these ancient times established principles that still guide candy making today. The careful control of temperature, the patience required for proper crystallization, the understanding that different sugars behave differently. All of these insights were discovered by people working with the simplest tools and the most basic ingredients. They laid the foundation for every candy innovation that would follow, proving that sometimes the most profound discoveries come from the gentlest and most patient experimentation. There's something almost magical about watching sugar transform under heat. The way granulated crystals slowly dissolve into clear syrup, then gradually deepen to amber as temperatures rise, releasing aromatic compounds that tell an experienced candy maker exactly what stage the process has reached. This transformation from simple sugar crystals to complex candy represents one of humanity's oldest forms of edible alchemy. Understanding candy making begins with understanding sugar itself. When we heat sugar, we're not just melting it, we're fundamentally changing its molecular structure. At around 186 degrees F, sugar crystals begin to dissolve into syrup. As the temperature continues to rise, water evaporates and the sugar concentration increases, creating different stages that candy makers have named with wonderfully descriptive terms: thread, soft ball, firm ball, hard ball, soft crack, and hard crack. Each stage creates candy with distinctly different textures and properties. The soft ball stage, reached around 235 degrees F, gives us fudge and fondant, candies that are firm yet yielding, with a smooth texture that melts gently on the tongue. The syrup at this stage, when dropped into cold water, forms a soft ball that flattens when removed. There's something deeply satisfying about this test. This ancient way of reading sugar's readiness through touch and observation, rather than thermometers and precision instruments. As we climb higher in temperature, reaching the hard ball stage around 250 degrees F, we enter the realm of caramels and nougats. The sugar syrup now forms a firm ball when dropped in cold water, one that holds its shape but still yields to pressure. This is where candy begins to develop that satisfying chewiness that makes caramel so irresistible. The longer cooking time at this stage also begins to develop the complex flavors that come from caramelization, those rich, nutty notes that transform simple sweetness into something much more sophisticated. The soft crack stage, around 270 degrees F, gives us saltwater taffy and butterscotch, candies that have a firm bite but still give way easily to teeth. Here, the syrup separates into flexible threads when dropped in cold water. There's a brief window of workability at this stage, where the candy can be pulled and shaped, creating those satisfying air bubbles that give taffy its characteristic texture. Finally, at the hard crack stage around 300 degrees F, we reach the realm of hard candies. Lollipops, peppermint sticks, and those jewel-like drops that catch light like stained glass. The syrup now forms brittle threads that snap cleanly when bent. This is where candy making becomes most like glass blowing, with artisans working quickly to shape their creations before the sugar cools and becomes unworkable. But temperature is only part of the story. The real magic happens when candy makers introduce other ingredients that modify these basic sugar structures. Acids like cream of tartar or lemon juice prevent unwanted crystallization, keeping hard candies clear and smooth. Fats like butter create richness and modify texture, while proteins from milk or cream contribute to browning reactions that develop complex flavors. The process of making chocolate candy involves an entirely different kind of alchemy. Cacao beans must be fermented, dried, roasted, and ground before they become the chocolate liquor that forms the base of all chocolate confections. The conching process, where chocolate is slowly kneaded for hours or even days, develops flavor and creates that smooth texture we associate with fine chocolate. Tempering, the careful heating and cooling that ensures chocolate sets with the proper crystal structure, requires a precision and understanding of crystallization that rivals any scientific procedure. Emulsification is another crucial process in candy making, particularly when creating smooth, creamy textures. When making caramels or chocolate ganache, candy makers must carefully combine ingredients that naturally want to separate: fats and water-based liquids. This requires understanding how emulsifiers work, how temperature affects the process, and how to achieve that perfect, silky texture that makes premium candy so luxurious. The role of humidity in candy making cannot be overstated. Sugar is hygroscopic, meaning it readily absorbs moisture from the air. A perfectly crisp hard candy can become sticky and soft on a humid day, while fudge might never set properly if the air contains too much moisture. Professional candy makers often work in climate-controlled environments, but traditional candy makers learn to read the weather and adjust their techniques accordingly. Crystallization control represents perhaps the most sophisticated aspect of candy making. Some candies, like rock candy, depend on controlled crystallization to create their structure. Others, like caramel, must prevent crystallization entirely to maintain their smooth texture. Candy makers achieve this through various techniques, adding acids or other ingredients that interfere with crystal formation, controlling cooling rates, or introducing seed crystals to encourage crystallization in desired patterns. The timing of when ingredients are added can dramatically affect the final product. Nuts added too early might burn. Flavoring added too late might not distribute evenly. Vanilla, one of the most common candy flavorings, is typically added at the very end of cooking because its delicate compounds can be destroyed by high heat. These timing considerations turn candy making into a carefully choreographed dance, where every step must happen at precisely the right moment. Modern candy making has introduced new tools and techniques, but the fundamental principles remain unchanged. Whether working with molecular gastronomy techniques that create surprising textures and flavors, or following recipes that have remained essentially unchanged for centuries, candy makers are still practicing the same careful alchemy that transforms simple ingredients into edible joy. Imagine yourself as a traveler with an unlimited passport and an insatiable sweet tooth, journeying across continents and through cultures where candy tells the story of local traditions, available ingredients, and generations of careful refinement. Each country's candy traditions reflect not just taste preferences, but geography, climate, history, and the creative spirit of people who found ways to transform their local ingredients into moments of pure sweetness. Our journey begins in Japan, where the art of candy making has been elevated to an almost spiritual practice. Japanese wagashi, traditional confections served with tea, represent the pinnacle of candy as edible art. These delicate sweets are crafted to reflect the changing seasons. Cherry blossom shapes in spring, maple leaf forms in autumn, each one carefully colored and shaped to capture not just flavor, but the essence of a particular moment in time. The process of making wagashi requires years of training, not just in technique, but in aesthetic sensitivity. Each sweet is designed to complement the bitter notes of matcha tea while providing a visual meditation on natural beauty. The Japanese approach to sweetness is notably restrained compared to Western traditions. Their confections often incorporate subtle flavors like red bean paste, green tea, or delicate fruit essences. Mochi, those wonderfully chewy rice-based sweets, demonstrate how a culture can create satisfying candy from ingredients that other traditions might never consider. The process of making mochi involves pounding steamed rice into a smooth, elastic paste that can be shaped and filled with various sweet preparations, a technique that requires perfect timing and rhythm. Moving west to India, we encounter a candy tradition that spans millennia and encompasses an extraordinary variety of milk-based sweets. Indian midai represents one of the world's most sophisticated dairy candy traditions. The process of making condensed milk candies like burfi or gulab jamun requires patience and skill that has been passed down through generations of sweet makers. The careful reduction of milk, the precise moment when sugar reaches the right concentration, the delicate balance of cardamom and rose water. These techniques create candies that are rich, aromatic, and deeply satisfying. Indian candy makers work with ingredients that reflect the subcontinent's role as a spice trading center. Saffron, cardamom, pistachios, and rose water combine in ways that create complex flavor profiles unknown in other candy traditions. The festival sweets prepared for Diwali or other celebrations often require days of preparation, with families gathering to roll tiny milk balls or shape intricate sugar sculptures that will be shared as expressions of joy and prosperity. In the Middle East, candy-making centers around ingredients that thrive in arid climates. Turkish delight, or lokum, represents the perfect adaptation of candy making to local conditions and tastes. The process involves creating a gel from starch and sugar that achieves a unique texture, firm enough to hold elaborate shapes, yet soft enough to melt pleasantly on the tongue. The addition of rose water, lemon, or mastic creates flavors that are distinctly Eastern Mediterranean. The traditional dusting with powdered sugar prevents sticking while adding a pleasant textural contrast. Persian candy traditions contribute another layer of sophistication to Middle Eastern sweets. The use of rosewater and pistachios in Persian confections creates flavor combinations that are both exotic and familiar. Traditional Persian nougat gaz incorporates a unique sap that gives it a texture unlike any other candy. These sweets often accompany tea service, providing a gentle counterpoint to strong black tea while creating opportunities for social connection and hospitality. European candy traditions vary dramatically from north to south, east to west, reflecting the continent's diverse climates and cultural influences. In Scandinavia, where long winters demanded preserved foods, candy making evolved to include techniques for creating shelf-stable sweets that could provide comfort during dark months. Norwegian crumcake and Swedish fish both reflect this northern approach to candy. Simple ingredients transformed through patient technique into treats that could brighten the darkest days. German candy-making traditions gave the world some of its most beloved confections. The systematic approach to candy making that characterizes German craftsmanship produced gummy bears, those perfectly engineered sweets that achieve an ideal balance of chewiness, flavor, and fun. The process of creating proper gummy texture requires precise control of gelatin concentration, cooking temperature, and cooling conditions. German chocolate traditions also contributed techniques for creating filled chocolates and complex flavor combinations. French confectionery represents perhaps the most refined and sophisticated approach to candy making in Europe. French candies often emphasize pure, clear flavors and elegant presentation. The French tradition of confiserie includes techniques for creating crystallized fruits, delicate sugar work, and filled chocolates that demonstrate extraordinary technical skill. French candy makers elevated sugar work to high art, creating elaborate centerpieces and decorative elements that blur the line between food and sculpture. Italian candy traditions reflect the country's regional diversity and agricultural abundance. Sicilian marzipan fruits demonstrate the Italian genius for transforming simple almond paste into realistic sculptures that delight both eye and palate. The Italian approach to candy often incorporates local ingredients: chestnuts from the north, citrus from the south, each region developing specialties that reflect their particular landscape and traditions. In Mexico and Central America, candy making incorporates indigenous ingredients that create flavor profiles unknown elsewhere. The use of chilies in Mexican candy demonstrates how sweetness and heat can complement each other. Traditional Mexican candy often combines surprising ingredients: tamarind with chili, chocolate with cinnamon, fruits with spicy seasonings, creating complex taste experiences that challenge conventional ideas about candy flavoring. Latin American candy traditions also showcase the creative use of tropical fruits and local sweeteners. The abundance of fresh fruits in these regions led to sophisticated techniques for creating fruit-based candies that preserve intense flavors while achieving satisfying textures. Dulce de leche, that silky caramel made from slowly cooked milk and sugar, represents the patience and skill that characterizes Latin American confectionery. African candy traditions, while less documented than others, contribute unique approaches to creating sweetness from local ingredients. The use of baobab fruit, honey from various native bees, and indigenous nuts creates candy experiences that reflect the continent's diverse ecosystems and cultures. Traditional honey-based candies from various African regions demonstrate sophisticated understanding of crystallization and flavor development. Each of these traditions teaches us something about the relationship between culture and candy. Whether it's the seasonal sensitivity of Japanese wagashi, the spice complexity of Indian midai, or the fruit intensity of Latin American dulces, candy becomes a window into how different cultures define pleasure, celebration, and comfort. These diverse approaches to sweetness remind us that candy is never just about sugar. It's about community, tradition, and the human desire to transform simple ingredients into moments of joy. Close your eyes and imagine the most perfect piece of chocolate slowly melting on your tongue. Feel how it transforms from solid to liquid, releasing complex flavors that seem to evolve and deepen with each moment. This simple pleasure connects you to a story that spans continents and millennia, beginning in the misty rainforests of Central America, where ancient civilizations first discovered the magic hidden within small, bitter seeds. The cacao tree, Theobroma cacao, whose scientific name literally means food of the gods, has been providing chocolate to human civilization for over 3,000 years. But the chocolate those ancient peoples knew bore little resemblance to the creamy, sweet confections we associate with the word today. For the Olmecs, Maya, and Aztecs, chocolate was a bitter, spicy drink reserved for nobility and warriors, a sacred beverage that connected the earthly and divine realms. Picture an ancient Mayan ceremony where chocolate was prepared with reverence and ritual. Cacao beans were carefully roasted over aromatic wood fires, then ground on heated stone metates that had been used for generations. The resulting paste was mixed with water, chili peppers, vanilla, and other spices. then poured between vessels to create the frothy texture that was considered essential to proper chocolate preparation. The sound of the liquid cascading between pots, the aromatic steam rising in the humid air, the careful attention to every detail. This was chocolate as sacred ritual rather than casual treat. The Aztec Emperor Moctezuma was said to consume dozens of cups of chocolate daily, served in golden goblets that were used only once before being discarded. Cacao beans were so valued that they served as currency throughout Mesoamerica. A turkey might cost 100 cacao beans, while a tomato could be purchased for just one. This monetary system gave chocolate a value that extended far beyond its nutritional or ceremonial importance. When Spanish conquistadors first encountered chocolate in the early 16th century, they were decidedly unimpressed. The bitter, spicy drink bore no resemblance to any European beverage, and many found it unpalatable. But gradually, Spanish colonists began adapting the preparation methods, adding sugar and familiar spices like cinnamon instead of chili peppers. This sweetened version of chocolate slowly gained acceptance in Spanish courts, where it became a fashionable drink among nobility. The transformation of chocolate from bitter ceremonial drink to sweet confection represents one of history's most successful cultural adaptations. As chocolate spread across Europe, each country added its own refinements. The Italians were among the first to create solid chocolate confections, while the Swiss would later pioneer milk chocolate. The Dutch developed techniques for separating cocoa butter from cocoa solids, creating possibilities for entirely new types of chocolate preparations. The process of transforming cacao beans into chocolate reveals nature's most complex flavor development story. Fresh cacao beans are actually quite bitter and astringent, with little resemblance to finished chocolate. The transformation begins with fermentation, where beans are piled together and allowed to develop heat from natural bacterial activity. This fermentation, which can last up to a week, begins breaking down compounds that create chocolate's eventual flavor complexity. After fermentation comes drying, traditionally done by spreading beans in the sun and turning them regularly to ensure even moisture removal. The dried beans develop deeper colors and begin to smell faintly of chocolate, though they're still far from the finished product. Roasting is where the magic really begins. Careful application of heat develops the hundreds of flavor compounds that give chocolate its characteristic aroma and taste. The grinding process, historically done on stone metates and now accomplished by sophisticated machinery, creates the smooth texture we associate with fine chocolate. During grinding, the friction generates heat that liquefies the cocoa butter naturally present in the beans, creating a flowing paste called chocolate liquor. This liquor can be processed in various ways, pressed to separate cocoa butter and powder, or combined with sugar and other ingredients to create different types of chocolate. Conching, a process developed in the 19th century, represents the final refinement step that separates good chocolate from great chocolate. During conching, chocolate is slowly kneaded for hours or even days, developing flavor while creating the smooth texture that allows fine chocolate to melt perfectly on the tongue. The patience required for proper conching reflects the same careful attention that has characterized chocolate making since ancient times. The different types of chocolate we enjoy today result from varying the proportions of chocolate liquor, cocoa butter, sugar, and other ingredients. Dark chocolate, with its high concentration of cocoa solids, provides intense flavor and complexity. Milk chocolate, achieved by adding dried milk powder or condensed milk, creates the creamy sweetness that makes it so universally appealing. White chocolate, made from cocoa butter without any cocoa solids, offers pure richness and serves as a perfect canvas for other flavors. Understanding chocolate tempering reveals perhaps the most sophisticated aspect of chocolate candy making. Proper tempering ensures that chocolate sets with the right crystal structure, creating that satisfying snap when you break a piece and the glossy appearance that indicates quality. The process involves carefully heating and cooling chocolate through specific temperature ranges that encourage the formation of stable crystals while preventing the formation of unstable ones. The flavor development in chocolate involves hundreds of individual compounds, many of which are shared with wine, coffee, and other complex foods. Terroir, the influence of soil, climate, and processing techniques on flavor, affects chocolate just as it does wine. Chocolate made from beans grown in Madagascar tastes distinctly different from chocolate made with Venezuelan beans, even when processed identically. Modern chocolate making has introduced innovations that would amaze ancient chocolate makers while still honoring the fundamental processes they developed. Bean-to-bar chocolate makers carefully control every step from fermentation through final production, creating chocolates with distinctive flavor profiles that reflect their origin and processing techniques. These artisanal approaches often revive traditional methods while incorporating modern understanding of food science. The role of chocolate in candy making extends far beyond simple eating chocolate. Chocolate serves as a coating for countless confections, a flavoring for everything from caramels to truffles, and a canvas for artistic expression in molded chocolates and decorative work. The working properties of chocolate, how it melts, how it sets, how it combines with other ingredients, make it one of the most versatile candy-making materials. Pairing chocolate with other flavors has become an art form in itself. Traditional combinations like chocolate and vanilla or chocolate and caramel remain popular, but modern chocolate makers experiment with unexpected flavor partners. Chocolate with sea salt, lavender, exotic spices, or even savory ingredients. These innovations continue the ancient tradition of viewing chocolate as a complex, sophisticated food worthy of careful attention and creative exploration. The story of chocolate reminds us that the best candies often have the longest histories, developing through centuries of refinement and cultural exchange. From sacred Aztec rituals to modern artisanal chocolate bars, the journey of chocolate demonstrates how simple natural ingredients can be transformed through patience, skill, and creativity into some of humanity's most beloved treats. Picture yourself standing before a master glassblower's workshop, watching molten glass transform into delicate, colorful art. Now imagine that same process, but instead of glass, we're working with crystallized sugar heated to temperatures that would make the material glow if we could see it in darkness. This is the realm of hard candy making, where sugar becomes medium for both sustenance and artistry, creating confections that catch light like edible jewels. Hard candy represents one of the oldest and most technically demanding forms of confectionery. The process requires heating sugar to the hard crack stage, around 300 degrees F, where the syrup becomes so concentrated that it will set into a glass-like solid when cooled. This temperature leaves no room for error. A few degrees too low, and the candy will remain sticky and soft. A few degrees too high, and the sugar begins to caramelize and develop bitter notes that can overwhelm delicate flavors. The earliest hard candies were simple affairs: honey or sugar heated until hard, perhaps flavored with herbs or spices. But even these simple preparations required considerable skill. Without modern thermometers, candy makers learned to judge temperature through sound, color, and the behavior of small amounts of syrup dropped into cold water. They developed an intimate understanding of how sugar behaves at different stages, knowledge passed down through generations of patient observation and practice. Traditional hard candy making begins with the creation of a clear sugar syrup. Pure sugar is dissolved in water and heated slowly, allowing any impurities to be skimmed away as they rise to the surface. The clarity of this initial syrup determines the transparency of the finished candy. Professional candy makers learned to work with the purest sugars available and to clarify their syrups using techniques that removed even microscopic particles that could cloud the final product. As the syrup heats and water evaporates, the sugar concentration increases and the temperature rises. The candy maker watches for subtle changes. The way bubbles form and behave in the syrup, the color that develops as sugars begin to caramelize slightly, the sound the syrup makes as it boils. These sensory cues, developed over years of experience, provide more reliable information than many modern instruments. Color in hard candy comes from various sources, each requiring different techniques and timing. Natural colorings like fruit juices or vegetable extracts must be added carefully to avoid affecting the candy's setting properties. Artificial colorings, more stable at high temperatures, allow for the brilliant, jewel-like colors that make hard candy so visually appealing. The timing of color addition affects both the final hue and the candy's clarity. Too early and the color may break down, too late, and it may not distribute evenly. Flavoring hard candy presents unique challenges. Most flavor compounds are volatile, meaning they evaporate readily when heated. Delicate flavors like vanilla or fruit essences can be completely destroyed by the high temperatures required for hard candy making. Traditional candy makers developed techniques for protecting these flavors, adding them at the last possible moment, using flavor oils instead of water-based extracts, or creating flavor combinations that could withstand heat. The pouring and shaping of hard candy requires speed and precision. Once the syrup reaches the proper temperature, there's only a brief window where it can be worked before it becomes too hard to manipulate. Traditional candy makers developed techniques for quickly pouring syrup into molds, creating hand-pulled shapes or forming free-form designs. This stage of candy making most resembles glassworking, with similar requirements for timing, coordination, and artistic vision. Lollipops represent perhaps the most iconic form of hard candy, and their creation demonstrates the ingenuity of candy makers in solving practical problems. How do you create a candy that can be safely consumed on a stick without the risk of the candy breaking away? The solution involves carefully designing the candy shape to lock onto the stick mechanically, while ensuring that the sugar syrup flows completely around the stick during formation. Traditional lollipop making often involved hand-spinning techniques that created unique artistic shapes while ensuring proper adherence to the stick. Ribbon candies and candy canes showcase the artistic possibilities of hard candy making. These confections require techniques borrowed from glassworking, pulling hot sugar syrup into long, thin strips, incorporating colors in precise patterns, and shaping the material while it remains workable. Candy cane making, particularly the traditional striped varieties, involves layering different colored syrups, and then pulling and twisting them to create the characteristic spiral pattern. The development of clear toys, hard candies molded into elaborate shapes, represented a high point in traditional candy artistry. These confections, popular in the 19th century, were created using detailed metal molds that could produce candy sculptures of remarkable complexity. The process required perfect temperature control to ensure the syrup flowed completely into all areas of the mold, while maintaining the clarity that made these candies so spectacular. Filled hard candies introduced another level of complexity to the craft. Creating a hard candy shell around a liquid or soft center requires precise timing and temperature control. The shell must be thick enough to maintain structural integrity, but thin enough to yield pleasantly when bitten. The center must be at the right temperature and consistency to avoid melting the shell or creating air pockets that would weaken the structure. Modern hard candy making has introduced new techniques and possibilities while maintaining respect for traditional methods. Isomalt, a sugar substitute that remains stable at higher temperatures and creates exceptionally clear candies, allows for artistic effects that would be impossible with traditional sugar. Molecular gastronomy techniques can create hard candies with unexpected properties. Shells that dissolve instantly on the tongue, candies that change flavor as they dissolve, or confections that create surprising sensory experiences. The storage and preservation of hard candy requires understanding the hygroscopic nature of sugar. Hard candies readily absorb moisture from the air, which can cause them to become sticky or lose their crisp texture. Traditional candy makers developed techniques for protecting their products. Special wrapping methods, storage in controlled environments, or the addition of ingredients that helped maintain proper texture over time. Quality control in hard candy making involves more than just taste testing. Professional candy makers evaluate their products for clarity, color consistency, texture, and shelf stability. They understand how factors like humidity, temperature variations, and ingredient quality affect their finished products. This attention to detail separates artisanal hard candy from mass-produced varieties. The meditative aspects of hard candy making appeal to many contemporary artisans. The process requires focus, patience, and attention to subtle changes that develop slowly over time. There's something deeply satisfying about transforming simple sugar into beautiful, flavorful confections through careful application of heat and technique. This mindful approach to candy making connects modern artisans with centuries of tradition. There's something deeply satisfying about the resistance of a perfectly chewy candy. That moment when your teeth sink through the surface and encounter just the right amount of give, the way the candy yields slowly while releasing bursts of flavor, the pleasant workout it provides for your jaw muscles. Chewy candy represents a completely different branch of confectionery science, one that focuses on creating textures that are engaging, long-lasting, and somehow comforting in a way that quick-dissolving candies cannot match. The science behind chewiness involves understanding how different ingredients create structure and texture in candy. Unlike hard candies that depend on crystallized sugar, chewy candies rely on proteins, starches, and other compounds that form flexible networks when heated and cooled. These networks give the candy its characteristic resistance, while allowing it to deform rather than break when pressure is applied. Gelatin derived from animal collagen represents the foundation of many chewy candy traditions. When gelatin is dissolved in hot water and then cooled, it forms a thermoreversible gel, a network of protein molecules that traps water while maintaining flexibility. The concentration of gelatin determines the final texture, from soft and yielding to firm and elastic. Traditional gummy candy making involves carefully balancing gelatin concentration with sugar content to achieve the perfect chew. The process of making gelatin-based candy begins with blooming, allowing gelatin granules to absorb cold water until they swell and soften. This step ensures even dissolution when heat is applied and prevents the formation of lumps that would create an unpleasant texture in the finished candy. The bloomed gelatin is then dissolved in hot sugar syrup at temperatures carefully controlled to avoid breaking down the protein structure. Fruit pectin offers an alternative to gelatin that creates a different type of chewiness. Pectin, the natural substance that helps fruits gel when making preserves, creates a firmer, more brittle chew than gelatin. Pectin-based candies often have a cleaner flavor release and a texture that some describe as more bouncy than traditional gummy candies. The behavior of pectin depends heavily on pH levels and sugar concentration, requiring different techniques than gelatin-based recipes. Starch-based chewy candies represent another approach to creating appealing textures. Turkish Delight, or lokum, achieves its distinctive texture through the careful cooking of starch with sugar to create a gel that's firmer than gelatin but softer than hard candy. The process involves slowly cooking cornstarch or other starches with sugar and water until the mixture reaches the proper consistency, a technique that requires patience and careful attention to prevent scorching. The art of making caramel demonstrates how dairy proteins and sugars combine to create complex, chewy textures. Traditional caramel making involves carefully heating sugar until it begins to caramelize, then slowly adding warm cream or milk. The interaction between the caramelized sugar and the proteins in dairy products creates both the rich flavor and the characteristic chewiness that makes caramel so appealing. The temperature to which the mixture is cooked determines the final texture. Soft caramels are cooked to lower temperatures, while firmer varieties are taken to higher heat. Taffy making showcases the mechanical aspects of creating chewy candy. The process involves cooking sugar syrup to the soft crack stage, then repeatedly stretching and folding the cooling candy to incorporate air and develop the proper texture. Traditional taffy pulling was often a social activity, with multiple people working together to stretch the candy until it achieved the characteristic light color and chewy texture. The pulling process aligns the sugar crystals and incorporates thousands of tiny air bubbles that give taffy its unique mouthfeel. Marshmallows represent perhaps the most sophisticated form of chewy candy, combining gelatin with whipped air to create a texture that's simultaneously soft and substantial. Traditional marshmallow making involves creating a sugar syrup that's cooked to a precise temperature, then whipping it with dissolved gelatin until it forms a stable foam. The ratio of gelatin to sugar, the whipping time, and the cooling conditions all affect the final texture and stability of the marshmallow. Nougat, particularly the traditional varieties found in European confectionery, demonstrates how egg whites can create chewy textures. The process involves whipping egg whites into a meringue, then slowly incorporating hot sugar syrup to create a stable foam that sets into a pleasantly chewy candy. The temperature of the syrup, the speed of incorporation, and the whipping time all affect the final texture, from soft and light to dense and chewy. The timing involved in chewy candy making is crucial and often counterintuitive. Unlike hard candies, where everything happens quickly at high temperatures, chewy candies often require patience and gradual processes. Caramel, for example, benefits from slow, gentle cooking that allows flavors to develop while preventing the proteins from seizing up and creating grainy textures. The best caramel makers learn to read subtle signs. The way the mixture bubbles, how it coats a spoon, the color development that indicates proper caramelization. Gummy bear manufacturing, while often industrialized today, still follows principles established by traditional candy makers. The key lies in achieving the perfect balance between firmness and chewiness, a texture that provides satisfying resistance without being tough or rubbery. Traditional gummy recipes often incorporated fruit acids not just for flavor, but because the acidity affects how gelatin sets, creating a more pleasant mouthfeel and helping preserve the candy's texture over time. The role of moisture in chewy candy cannot be overstated. Unlike hard candies that must remain absolutely dry to maintain their structure, chewy candies depend on controlled moisture content to achieve their characteristic texture. Too little moisture and the candy becomes hard and brittle, too much and it becomes sticky and shapeless. Professional candy makers learn to adjust their recipes based on ambient humidity, understanding that environmental conditions significantly affect their final products. Flavor delivery in chewy candies presents unique opportunities and challenges. The longer chewing time means that flavors can develop and change as the candy is consumed, creating complex taste experiences. However, the gel structure can also trap flavors, requiring higher concentrations or different types of flavorings to achieve the desired intensity. Some chewy candies incorporate multiple flavor layers, with different tastes releasing at different stages of the chewing experience. Modern innovations in chewy candy include the development of plant-based alternatives to gelatin that can create similar textures while accommodating dietary restrictions. Agar-agar, derived from seaweed, creates a firmer gel than gelatin, but can be processed to achieve satisfying chewiness. Pectin combinations and modified starches offer other alternatives, each bringing slightly different textural properties and flavor characteristics. The psychology of chewing plays a role in the appeal of these candies. The act of chewing can be stress-relieving and satisfying in ways that quick-dissolving candies cannot match. The extended flavor experience and the mechanical satisfaction of working through a chewy candy create a different type of pleasure, more meditative and engaging than passive candy consumption. Quality control in chewy candy production focuses heavily on texture consistency. Professional candy makers evaluate their products not just for flavor, but for the resistance they provide, how they break down during chewing, and how long they maintain their texture. These evaluations require trained palates and standardized testing procedures to ensure consistent results. Imagine the first moment your tongue encounters a piece of truly sour candy. That instant when your entire mouth seems to wake up, your salivary glands spring into action, and your face involuntarily contorts into expressions that would be comical if they weren't so universal. Sour candy represents one of the most dramatic and physiologically engaging categories of confectionery, creating sensory experiences that go far beyond simple sweetness to engage our most primitive taste responses. The science of sourness begins with understanding acids and how they interact with our taste receptors. Sour taste comes from hydrogen ions. The more acidic a solution, the more hydrogen ions it contains, and the more intensely sour it tastes. Different acids create different types of sourness. Citric acid provides the sharp, clean tartness we associate with citrus fruits. Malic acid gives the distinctive sour bite found in green apples. Tartaric acid contributes the particular sourness of grapes and wine. Traditional sour candy making often relied on natural fruit acids, incorporated through the use of citrus juices, vinegar, or fermented fruit preparations. Early candy makers discovered that these natural acids not only provided sourness, but also helped prevent crystallization in sugar syrups, creating smoother textures while adding complex flavors. The challenge lay in balancing the acidity to provide pleasant tartness, without overwhelming the palate or creating harsh, unpalatable sensations. The coating technique used in many modern sour candies creates an immediate, intense sour impact followed by underlying sweetness. This approach involves creating a base candy, often a gummy or hard candy, then coating it with a mixture of citric acid, malic acid, and other sour compounds. The concentration of acids in these coatings can be remarkably high, creating the face-puckering intensity that sour candy enthusiasts crave. Citric acid, derived from citrus fruits, but now produced commercially through fermentation, provides the foundation for most sour candy formulations. It creates a sharp, immediate sourness that hits the taste buds quickly and intensely. The crystalline structure of citric acid means it can be applied as a coating that delivers maximum impact the moment it touches the tongue, creating that dramatic initial sour shock. Malic acid adds a different dimension to sourness. It tends to linger longer on the palate and creates a smoother, more rounded sour sensation than citric acid alone. Apple-flavored sour candies often feature malic acid prominently, as it naturally occurs in apples and provides an authentic flavor experience. The combination of malic and citric acids can create complex sour profiles that change as the candy is consumed. Tartaric acid, less common in candy making, but prized for its unique properties, provides the sourness associated with grapes and contributes to the distinctive taste of certain European sour candies. It tends to create a more astringent sensation than other acids, adding complexity to sour candy formulations when used judiciously. The manufacturing process for intensely sour candies requires careful handling and specialized equipment. The high concentrations of acids used can be corrosive to standard candy-making equipment, requiring stainless steel surfaces and acid-resistant coatings. Workers must use protective equipment to avoid irritation from acid dust, and the production environment must be carefully controlled to prevent moisture from causing the acid coatings to become sticky or uneven. Fizzy candies represent a unique subcategory that combines sourness with tactile sensations. Pop rocks and similar candies incorporate pressurized carbon dioxide that's trapped in hard candy. When the candy dissolves on the tongue, the C-Otwo is released, creating a crackling, popping sensation that adds a dramatic sensory element to the eating experience. The manufacturing process for these candies involves exposing molten candy to pressurized carbon dioxide, allowing the gas to become trapped as the candy hardens. The psychology of sour candy consumption involves complex interactions between pleasure and pain. The initial sour shock triggers stress responses that cause the release of endorphins, natural painkillers that can create feelings of pleasure and excitement. This biochemical response helps explain why many people become enthusiastic about intensely sour candies despite, or perhaps because of, the initial discomfort they cause. Cultural differences in sour candy preferences reflect varying tolerance levels and flavor traditions. What seems pleasantly tart to someone raised on sour foods might be overwhelmingly acidic to someone from a culture that emphasizes different flavor profiles. Nordic countries, for example, have strong traditions of extremely sour candies that might be challenging for palates accustomed to sweeter confections. The balance between sour and sweet in candy design requires careful consideration. Too much sourness can mask other flavors and create an unpleasant eating experience, while too little fails to provide the dramatic impact that sour candy lovers seek. Successful sour candy formulations often create a progression of tastes. Intense initial sourness that gradually gives way to underlying fruit flavors and eventual sweetness. Flavor pairing with sour elements opens creative possibilities for candy makers. Traditional combinations like sour cherry or sour apple remain popular because they mirror natural fruit flavors. However, modern candy makers experiment with unexpected combinations. Sour chocolate, sour caramel, or even sour and spicy combinations that create complex, layered taste experiences. The preservation challenges in sour candy making relate primarily to maintaining the integrity of acid coatings. Moisture can cause acid crystals to dissolve and redistribute, reducing the initial sour impact and potentially creating sticky surfaces. Proper packaging and storage become crucial for maintaining the sharp, defined sourness that these candies depend on for their appeal. Health considerations in sour candy consumption center primarily around dental health. The high acid content in these candies can temporarily soften tooth enamel, making teeth more susceptible to damage. Dental professionals recommend consuming sour candies in moderation and avoiding prolonged contact with teeth. Advice that runs counter to the natural tendency to savor these intense flavor experiences. Modern innovations in sour candy include the development of release acid systems that can create changing levels of sourness throughout the eating experience. Encapsulation techniques allow candy makers to protect acid crystals until specific points in the dissolution process, creating candies that become more or less sour as they're consumed. The social aspect of sour candy consumption often involves challenge and shared experience. Many sour candies are marketed partly on their intensity, creating informal competitions among consumers to see who can tolerate the most extreme varieties. This social element adds another dimension to sour candy appeal, making the consumption experience as much about bravery and social bonding as about flavor. Picture yourself walking through a confectioner's workshop where sugar has been transformed into miniature sculptures that seem too beautiful to eat. Delicate flowers with petals so thin they're translucent, architectural marvels that defy gravity, and realistic fruits that look freshly picked from an orchard. This is the realm where candy making transcends simple confectionery to become high art, where skilled artisans use sugar as their medium to create works that engage all the senses, while challenging our perceptions of what food can be. The tradition of sugar sculpture dates back centuries, to a time when wealthy European courts competed to present the most elaborate and impressive displays at their banquets. These early sugar artists, known as confectioners or pastry chefs, created entire table landscapes from sugar, marzipan, and other malleable sweets. Castles complete with towers and battlements, gardens with intricate topiary work, and mythological scenes populated with sugar figures. These creations served as both dessert and entertainment, demonstrating the host's wealth and sophistication. The techniques used in sugar artistry require skills that bridge cooking and sculpture. Working with sugar in its various forms, from pliable fondant to glass-like isomalt, demands understanding of temperature, timing, and the physical properties of different sugar preparations. Hot sugar can be pulled like glass, creating gossamer-thin sheets and delicate ribbons. Cooled sugar can be carved, shaped, and assembled into complex three-dimensional forms. Blown sugar, one of the most challenging techniques in sugar artistry, involves inflating hot sugar like glass to create hollow forms. The process requires perfect timing. The sugar must be hot enough to remain pliable, but cool enough to hold its shape as air is blown into it. Master sugar artists can create incredibly delicate forms this way. Translucent bubbles, realistic fruits with perfect proportions, or abstract sculptures that seem to capture light and hold it within their crystalline structures. Spun sugar, sometimes called angel hair, creates gossamer threads that can be shaped into clouds, nests, or decorative elements that add ethereal beauty to sugar sculptures. The technique involves flicking hot sugar syrup with a whisk or specialized tool, creating fine threads that cool quickly in the air. These threads can be gathered, shaped, and used to create textures and visual effects that would be impossible with solid sugar. The coloring of artistic sugar work requires understanding how different pigments and dyes behave at high temperatures. Some colors remain stable when heated, while others break down or change hue. Natural colorings often provide more subtle, sophisticated colors, but may be less stable than artificial alternatives. The timing of color addition affects both the final appearance and the workability of the sugar. Some techniques require adding color to hot sugar, while others work better with colored sugar that's reheated. Marzipan sculpture represents another branch of candy artistry that focuses on modeling and realistic representation. The almond-based paste used in marzipan provides an ideal medium for detailed work. It holds fine details well, can be colored naturally, and remains workable for extended periods. Traditional marzipan artists create incredibly realistic fruits, vegetables, and flowers that are often mistaken for the real thing until someone attempts to take a bite. The tools used in sugar artistry are often borrowed from other crafts and adapted for working with edible materials. Heat lamps keep sugar at workable temperatures, silicone molds create perfect reproductions of natural forms, and specialized cutting tools allow for precise shaping and detail work. Many sugar artists make their own tools, creating specialized implements that serve their particular techniques and artistic vision. Seasonal candy artistry has deep roots in cultural traditions around the world. Easter sugar eggs with intricate scenes inside, Halloween sugar skulls decorated with vibrant colors and patterns, Christmas candy canes shaped into elaborate decorative forms. These seasonal specialties demonstrate how candy artistry serves both aesthetic and cultural functions. The techniques developed for these traditional forms often influence contemporary sugar artistry. Modern sugar artists push the boundaries of what's possible with edible materials. They incorporate techniques from molecular gastronomy, use new materials like isomalt that remain stable at higher temperatures, and experiment with combinations of traditional candy making with contemporary artistic concepts. Some create sugar sculptures that change over time as they're exposed to air and humidity, turning the deterioration process into part of the artistic statement. The presentation of artistic candy work requires consideration of lighting, background, and context. Sugar sculptures can appear dramatically different under various lighting conditions. Some are designed to be backlit to show their transparency, while others depend on reflected light to reveal surface textures and details. The ephemeral nature of sugar art adds poignancy to these displays, as viewers understand they're witnessing something beautiful that cannot last indefinitely. Educational aspects of candy artistry include the technical skills that transfer to other crafts and the historical knowledge that comes with understanding traditional techniques. Students learning sugar artistry develop patience, precision, and an understanding of how materials behave under different conditions, skills that prove valuable in many other pursuits. The historical context of sugar artistry connects students with centuries of culinary and artistic tradition. The documentation of candy artistry presents unique challenges. These ephemeral artworks must be photographed or filmed quickly after completion, before environmental factors begin affecting their appearance. Many sugar artists become skilled photographers as well, learning how to capture the beauty and complexity of their work in permanent form, even as the originals slowly deteriorate. Competition in candy artistry has created standardized techniques and inspired innovations that might not have developed otherwise. International competitions challenge sugar artists to create increasingly complex and beautiful works within time constraints that mirror the original pressures of creating impressive displays for important events. These competitions also preserve traditional techniques while encouraging artistic evolution. The therapeutic aspects of candy artistry appeal to many practitioners who find the focused, meditative work deeply satisfying. The requirement for complete attention to the task at hand, combined with the sensory engagement of working with materials that smell, feel, and even taste good, creates a form of active meditation that many artists find restorative and energizing. Step through the door of a traditional candy store and feel the wave of sensory magic that washes over you. The mingled aromas of chocolate and vanilla, caramel and peppermint, the visual feast of colors arranged in gleaming glass cases, the soft sounds of paper crinkling as selections are wrapped in small bags. This is more than a retail space. It's a theater where anticipation builds with each choice, where the simple act of selecting candy becomes a ritual that connects us to childhood wonder and the pure joy of indulgence. The evolution of candy stores reflects broader changes in commerce, manufacturing, and social customs. Early candy shops were often extensions of apothecaries, where confectioners prepared medicinal lozenges and tooth powders alongside sweet treats. These establishments maintained an air of respectability and health consciousness that gradually gave way to pure pleasure-seeking, as sugar became more affordable and candy making more sophisticated. The penny candy era, roughly spanning the late 19th and early 20th centuries, democratized candy consumption in ways that transformed childhood itself. For the first time, children could enter stores with their own money, a precious penny or nickel, and make independent choices about what to purchase. The ritual of selecting individual pieces from large glass jars created a sense of agency and decision-making that many adults still remember fondly. Store owners became curators of wonder, arranging their wares to maximize visual impact and create the most difficult possible choices for young customers. Traditional candy store design evolved to enhance the sensory experience of selection and purchase. High glass cases displayed their contents at eye level for adults, while remaining mysterious and tantalizing for children. The theater of candy selection, pointing to desired items, watching them being weighed and bagged, the ceremonial exchange of money for sweets, created anticipation that enhanced the eventual enjoyment of the candy itself. The seasonal rhythms of candy stores created community traditions that extended far beyond simple commerce. Halloween windows filled with orange and black decorations and candy corn displays, Christmas showcases featuring hand-dipped chocolates and candy canes, Easter celebrations with elaborate chocolate eggs and marshmallow chicks. These seasonal transformations marked the passage of time and created shared experiences that bound communities together. Behind the counter, candy store proprietors developed intimate knowledge of their customers' preferences and habits. They remembered which grandmother always bought the same assortment of hard candies, which children saved their allowances for expensive chocolate bars, which couples shared romantic moments selecting truffles for special occasions. This personal attention created relationships that transformed simple commercial transactions into social interactions that enriched community life. The craft of candy display became an art form in itself. Successful candy store owners learned principles of color theory, understanding how different arrangements could make products appear more appealing. They discovered that certain combinations created visual excitement, while others promoted feelings of elegance or nostalgia. The arrangement of candy became a form of visual merchandising that influenced customer behavior and enhanced the overall experience. Packaging in traditional candy stores served both practical and psychological functions. Paper bags twisted just so, tissue paper that crinkled pleasingly, small boxes that could be saved and treasured. These details extended the pleasure of candy beyond the actual eating experience. Many customers saved candy boxes and bags, using them to hold other small treasures and preserving the memory of special purchases. The social function of candy stores extended beyond simple retail. They served as meeting places where community members encountered each other, shared news, and maintained social connections. Children learned social skills through interactions with store owners and other customers. Adults found excuses to indulge in small pleasures while accomplishing the practical task of purchasing gifts or treats for others. Regional variations in candy store culture reflected local tastes and traditions. New England stores might specialize in saltwater taffy and maple candy, while southern establishments featured pralines and bourbon-flavored confections. These regional specialties helped maintain cultural identity, while creating reasons for travelers to seek out local candy stores as authentic expressions of place and tradition. The decline of independent candy stores in the mid-20th century reflected broader changes in retail patterns and manufacturing. Mass production made candy more affordable but less personal, while suburban shopping centers drew customers away from neighborhood stores. The rise of prepackaged candy reduced the theater of selection and the personal relationships that had made candy stores special. However, the late 20th and early 21st centuries have seen a revival of artisanal candy stores that combine traditional approaches with modern sophistication. These new establishments often focus on small-batch, high-quality confections made with premium ingredients. They appeal to customers seeking authentic experiences and products with stories. Candy made by identifiable artisans using traditional techniques. Modern candy store design often attempts to recreate the magic of traditional establishments while incorporating contemporary retail psychology. Careful lighting showcases products effectively. Controlled temperature and humidity protect delicate confections, and strategic layout guides customers through carefully planned purchasing journeys. These elements combine to create environments that honor candy store traditions, while meeting modern expectations for comfort and convenience. The educational aspect of contemporary candy stores often includes demonstrations, classes, and behind-the-scenes tours that help customers understand and appreciate the skill involved in candy making. These experiences create deeper connections between customers and products, while justifying premium prices for artisanal confections. The knowledge gained through these interactions enhances appreciation and enjoyment of the candy itself. Online candy retailing has created new possibilities for specialty confectioners to reach customers beyond their immediate geographic areas. However, successful online candy stores must find ways to recreate the sensory aspects of traditional candy shopping through detailed descriptions, high-quality photography, and carefully designed packaging that preserves the excitement of opening and discovering the contents. The psychology of candy store layout and design continues to evolve as retailers learn more about customer behavior and preferences. The placement of premium items, the use of sampling to encourage purchases, the creation of gift sections that suggest candy as appropriate for various occasions. These strategies reflect sophisticated understanding of how environment influences purchasing decisions. Contemporary candy stores often serve as anchors for downtown revitalization efforts, drawing foot traffic and creating destinations that encourage exploration of surrounding businesses. Their appeal to both children and adults makes them valuable community assets that can bridge generational divides while creating shared experiences that strengthen social bonds. In our final chapter together, we arrive at a place where ancient wisdom meets modern understanding, where the simple pleasure of candy consumption intersects with contemporary knowledge about nutrition, psychology, and the art of mindful living. This isn't about eliminating sweetness from our lives, but rather about understanding how to engage with candy in ways that honor both our desire for pleasure and our commitment to overall well-being. The science of sweetness reveals that our attraction to sugar serves important biological functions. Sweet taste receptors evolved to help our ancestors identify ripe, energy-rich fruits and other beneficial foods. The pleasure we derive from sweetness isn't a character flaw to be overcome, but rather a deeply embedded survival mechanism that served our species well throughout history. Understanding this helps us approach candy consumption without guilt, while making informed decisions about when and how we indulge. Modern research has revealed the complex ways that sugar affects our brains and bodies. When we taste something sweet, our brains release neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin that create feelings of pleasure and satisfaction. This biochemical response explains why candy can provide genuine comfort during stress, and why moderate indulgence can contribute to psychological well-being. The key lies in understanding these responses and using them intentionally rather than unconsciously. The concept of mindful eating, when applied to candy consumption, transforms the experience from unconscious habit to conscious pleasure. Mindful candy eating involves paying attention to flavors, textures, and sensations as they develop and change. It means savoring the initial sweetness, noticing how different flavors emerge as the candy dissolves, and appreciating the craftsmanship that created these complex sensory experiences. Portion awareness becomes important when practicing mindful candy consumption. Rather than mindlessly consuming candy from large packages, mindful eating involves selecting specific amounts and consuming them with full attention. This approach often leads to greater satisfaction with smaller quantities, as the enhanced awareness increases the pleasure derived from each piece. The timing of candy consumption can significantly affect both enjoyment and nutritional impact. Consuming small amounts of candy as part of balanced meals or immediately after exercise can minimize blood sugar spikes while maximizing pleasure. Understanding these timing considerations allows for candy enjoyment that supports rather than undermines overall health goals. Quality considerations in candy selection reward those who choose carefully made confections over mass-produced alternatives. Artisanal candies made with premium ingredients often provide more intense flavor experiences that satisfy cravings with smaller portions. The increased cost of high-quality candy can actually support mindful consumption by making each piece feel more precious and worthy of full attention. Natural sweetener innovations have created new possibilities for candy enjoyment that align with various dietary preferences and health goals. Honey-based candies reconnect us with humanity's oldest sweet treats while providing more complex flavors than refined sugar. Maple syrup, fruit concentrates, and other natural sweeteners create candies with distinctive flavor profiles that can be every bit as satisfying as traditional formulations. The role of candy in celebration and social connection deserves recognition and respect rather than guilt and shame. Sharing candy creates bonds between people, marks special occasions, and contributes to cultural traditions that enrich our lives. Understanding this social dimension of candy consumption helps us appreciate its value beyond simple calories and nutrients. Seasonal eating patterns can guide candy consumption in ways that feel natural and sustainable. Embracing the candy traditions associated with different holidays and seasons. Chocolate at Valentine's Day, candy corn at Halloween, peppermint during winter months. Creates rhythms that prevent constant indulgence while ensuring that special occasions remain special. The psychological benefits of small indulgences include stress relief, mood enhancement, and the satisfaction of honoring our desires rather than constantly denying them. Research suggests that people who include moderate amounts of favorite foods in their diets are more successful at maintaining healthy eating patterns long-term than those who attempt complete restriction. Understanding candy ingredients helps consumers make informed choices that align with their values and health goals. Reading labels, understanding the differences between various types of sugars and other ingredients, and learning about production methods empowers consumers to select candies that best serve their individual needs and preferences. The environmental and ethical dimensions of candy production deserve consideration from conscious consumers. Supporting companies that use sustainable farming practices, fair trade ingredients, and responsible manufacturing processes allows candy enjoyment to align with broader values about environmental protection and social justice. Storage and preservation knowledge helps maintain candy quality while preventing waste. Understanding how different types of candy should be stored, how long they remain at peak quality, and how to recognize signs of deterioration ensures that candy consumption remains pleasurable and safe. The art of candy pairing, combining different candies or pairing candy with other foods and beverages, can create enhanced flavor experiences that increase satisfaction. Understanding how flavors complement and contrast with each other opens new possibilities for enjoyment, while often leading to greater satisfaction with smaller quantities. Homemade candy making offers opportunities for creative expression while providing complete control over ingredients and quality. The skills involved in candy making can become meditative practices that provide satisfaction beyond the finished products. The process of creating candy from simple ingredients connects us with traditional foodways, while allowing for personal creativity and expression. The future of candy likely includes continued innovation in natural sweeteners, sustainable production methods, and functional ingredients that provide benefits beyond simple pleasure. Understanding these trends helps consumers make choices that align with emerging possibilities, while maintaining appreciation for traditional approaches that have provided satisfaction for centuries. Teaching children about mindful candy consumption creates lifelong habits that support both health and happiness. This involves modeling moderate enjoyment, teaching appreciation for quality over quantity, and helping children understand candy's role in celebrations and special occasions while maintaining overall dietary balance. As we reach the end of our sweet journey together, let's take a moment to appreciate the remarkable story we've uncovered. From ancient honey crystals formed in Egyptian tombs to modern molecular gastronomy confections, from the sacred chocolate rituals of Mesoamerican civilizations to the sustainable candy innovations of today, we've discovered that candy is never just about sugar and flavoring. It's about human creativity, cultural exchange, scientific innovation, and our endless capacity to transform simple ingredients into sources of joy and connection. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the complete world of candy. If you're already drifting off, then our mission is complete. But if you're still awake, perhaps another deep dive will carry you gently into slumber. Until we meet again in these quiet hours, may your dreams taste like childhood wonder and morning sunshine. May you always find reasons to smile at small indulgences, and remember that sweetness, whether in candy or in life, is meant to be savored slowly.